Well, hello everyone. If you're new here, I'm Allen with Earthglow, and this channel is all about sharing the joy of candle making. Today we have a really special guest, and I'm going to introduce you all to Mel from Makesy. If you haven't already seen her before, Mel, welcome. We're really honored to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Allen. Excited to be here.
And today's video is actually going to be addressing some questions that you all had asked. And I'm really excited because Mel has agreed to come on the channel and join you all live and answer these questions that you all have submitted for me. So let's just get right into it. Does that sound good to you?
Absolutely. Let's get them coming.
Okay, so the first question we had was, what are a few of your top tips to get more consistency in flame height with wooden wicks? Which I know is already kind of a loaded question, right? Because wooden wicks are not manufactured like cotton wicks are.
Absolutely. Well, that is a great question. And specifically, the first thing I would double check is making sure that you're trimming consistently. Believe it or not, that extra wood material on the top of your candle will change how the flame performs. It can often make it not burn as well. It can also make it burn too hot if you have a little bit extra material on there, depending on your wax type and your fragrance load. So always make sure that you're trimming consistently. My tip there is to make sure that you try pre-trimming. So that instead of trimming them after you've poured your candle and after it's solidified, you want to go ahead and make sure that everything is consistent and you're pouring to the same level every time you pour your candle. And you can even get your wicks pre-trimmed from Makesy. You can order the wick size that you need for your vessel size. And so I do a little bit of research and development, pre-trim your wick, find out what size wick performs best, and make sure that you're always pouring consistently to the same spot every time. We always recommend leaving about 3/16 of an inch or 0.2 inches above the wax and not going any larger or smaller than that.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of a challenge that at least I have personally, is I always think, oh, I'm going to trim the wooden wick too short, and they have to be trimmed a little bit shorter than cotton wicks in general. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a lot of times, like we want more of the wick material because it looks so pretty, right? And you're like, oh, like we want people to be able to see the wick. But the problem with that is then you get inconsistency of burn. You've got like this giant wick that turns into carbon after they first burn it. And then they've got this giant piece to break off, and it's not a good situation for anybody. So I would definitely recommend always erring on the smaller side. And again, conducting your burn tests to really find out, and then narrow in on just exactly what the perfect size of your wick is and go from there. It'll make it a lot easier.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate all that detailed information on that one. The next question is about clean scents. And I'm going to preface this one by talking about my rigorous standard for clean scents. And all of you who are watching on the channel know kind of what that is, but I'll briefly go over it again. So when I'm looking for fragrance oils for my candle collection, I'm specifically looking to avoid fragrances that have a number of ingredients that are very often found in fragrances because, you know, they make them last longer on the shelf and sometimes perform easier, better, etc. But I'm looking to avoid these ingredients because I find that they can be dangerous for people or for pets or for kids, etc. And that specifically is going to be fragrances containing phthalates, toxins, which could be organ toxins, reproductive toxins, and acute toxins, as well as carcinogens. And that would include everything on Prop 65, right? Because if a chemical is known or thought to cause cancer in California, it's probably not any safer anywhere else. And then I'm also looking to avoid mutagens, right? So those physical or chemical agents that can alter the DNA of a cell. And they can be associated with cancer and just all kinds of stuff. And then I'm also looking to avoid things that are tested on animals. And whenever possible, I like my fragrances to be vegan. So we had a viewer ask how Makesy fragrances are in terms of being clean scents. And I'm just curious how close your oils would come to meeting all of that criteria.
Woo, that is a good loaded question. And we take a lot of pride in our fragrance oils, from formulating them with multiple scent notes to really bringing the highest quality oils on the market. And that's why our price points are a little bit higher. And that's one of the main contentions I know you guys often have, is that your fragrance oils are so expensive. And we know, and unfortunately, there's so much that goes into them, and that is why they're expensive. As you know, as a candle maker, your cost of raw materials dictates the price point of which you sell your candle for, and the same thing goes for us. So we do the best that we can. We've also launched the Luxe for Less line, which helps a little bit with that as well. But coming back to the ingredients in the fragrance oils, all of our fragrance oils are phthalate and paraben free, and they are cruelty free and vegan, every single one of them. From there, we have different tiers that break down the different mutagens and carcinogens and things under our made better standards. And so we're always looking to optimize our fragrances and reformulate them as we can, and as the opportunities are accessible for us to make them cleaner and cleaner as we can. But to break down the tiers, so underneath the blanket of everything being paraben, phthalate free, cruelty free, and vegan. Then underneath that, we have our all natural collection. Our all natural collection has no synthetic ingredients. And so when we talk synthetics in terms of fragrance, it just means something could be bioidentical in terms of its chemical makeup. It doesn't mean that it has chemicals in it. It just means that it is created in a lab to be bioidentical to what the original compound might be. So that, if that helps you guys understand, but the people who want the all natural and nothing that is made in a lab, the all natural collection is for you. And then underneath every single fragrance, we have subcategories under our made better standards. So every single fragrance will have a drop down underneath on the product page that gives you the made better standard for that particular fragrance. Every oil is formulated a little bit differently because of the natural chemical components. And when I say a chemical, again, I'm not talking about chemicals. I'm talking about the actual what that means in science, what makes up that fragrance smell. And so you'll find underneath each fragrance, it breaks down the made better standard, and it'll say if it is mutagen free, carcinogen free, Prop 65 free, and all those things. And so again, those are evaluated individually because again, each fragrance is individually made a little bit differently. But here at Makesy, we do make it a point to have as many carcinogen free, Prop 65 free, mutagen free fragrances as possible because we care so much about that. And so you'll be able to find those on the drop down. And then additionally, we have additional sub collections that also are lab tested for a specific purpose. And so you'll find in our functional plus collections, we've got ones that are bug repellent, they're certified bug repellent. We've got ones that are certified for mood enhancement, for clean, for killing germs and bacteria, and for sleep, and a few other different categories underneath that. And so the functional category is really one of my favorite categories and one of our newer categories that I think a lot of people don't know about. And so I'm telling you about it now. They're awesome. They actually have been lab tested for these particular purposes, which is why we can label them for that specific benefit. So that's yeah. And so again, coming back, we really pride ourselves, our made better standard. There's a little blog post on our website where you can reference our made better standard and a little bit about what that means. And we'll link that in the video here. But again, we really take pride in our fragrances. Again, what you said, Alan, how I believe in the video that we did on our channel, you were saying that a lot of times you get skin reactions and body butters and things from other oils. And we really make it a point to eliminate as much of those types of irritants and things as possible.
Yeah, no, it's very clear. And I've gotten to where with body butters and leave-on products specifically, I know this is not a branding video at all, but for those of you watching and you want just an easy source for those types of products in general, I have not had one oil that I've tried from Makesy cause an irritation in my customer's skin for a leave-on product. I think for cold processed soaps, you can get away with a lot more because it's going to be a rinse-off product. But a lot of times with a body butter or sometimes even shampoo bars, I've had people be really sensitive because it's their scalp, and that's more sensitive tissue than just what you're using like for a soap and washing off, etc. And so for those and for body butters specifically, makes these oils are just phenomenal, really phenomenal for just an easy go-to, I think. Yeah. Excellent. Well, the next question that we have here is, okay, so this one is interesting. And this one also may not be a yes or no answer. But someone was asking, when we are testing our candles with wooden wicks, would you say that it's accurate to use multiple wicks on one jar? So in other words, if you're not getting kind of the wicking that you want, to just pop out one wick and then put in another one and kind of remelt the candle.
That is a great question. And, I've seen this hack floating around TikTok and Instagram for a while. And you know what, guys, I totally understand why you do it. It makes it cheaper for you. It makes it faster for you. But scientifically, right, when we are looking at from a scientific level and perspective, candle making is a science, right? And when you do an experiment and you're testing, essentially your burn testing is an experiment to see how something performs, you're changing one variable at a time, right? And so if you just go and decide, I'm just going to pull this wick out and insert another one, you risk ruining the efficacy rather, and the purity of your experiment. And thus you risk not having favorable results in the end. And so ultimately, I don't have a huge problem with this, but I would just say, I would always err on the side of doing replicating everything to a T, because again, you're doing a scientific experiment. And anytime you interrupt that or you try to shortcut it, it puts you at risk for your end result not being consistent. That's what I would say to that.
No, I think that makes absolute sense. And I kind of, in my own practices, have adopted sort of an in the middle stance on that, to where I'll sometimes use it when I'm just trying to get a ballpark. But I will say also, for those of you watching this, another way to get a really great ballpark is to go to your suppliers' websites. And some of them, I know Makesy has this, is a wick selection guide. And that will give you a really good starting place if you just have no idea where to start, like I do, especially when I'm trying a new wax or a new vessel and I'm just kind of wondering where to get a ballpark. But what I'll do with my own candles is sometimes I will pop the wicks out and put a new one in, but that's just to kind of give me a very broad ballpark, right? So when I'm actually doing the more scrupulous testing, I will want to make sure that I have that candle filled all the way up, just as the customer is going to be burning it, and go from, top to bottom. Sometimes I'll do proper burns, and other times I'll see what happens if I do like a 6-hour power burn, just because I don't want it to burn someone's house down if they actually were to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and that's great.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the info on that one though. And then the next question that we have is, do wooden wicks, oh, this is interesting too, do they create a stronger or faster scent than cotton wicks? And I know you talked to me a little bit about the difference in the capillary size, I think.
I love this question, because not to say that I'm a little bit biased, but I'm a little bit biased. I love wooden wicks, and part of it probably is because I've been with Makesy since we were the Wooden Wick Co, and I just fell in love with them. But essentially, the cool thing that a lot of people don't know about wooden wicks is that they actually do help enhance fragrance throw. And this has been scientifically lab tested, that because the wood capillaries are larger oftentimes than hemp or cotton capillaries, it pulls more fragrance and wax up the capillaries up your wick faster and in higher concentration. So it does increase your fragrance throw.
And that is what I found in my own experience too. I don't know that I found more that it produces a faster fragrance throw. I can light a wooden wick candle, and within 10 or 15 minutes, oftentimes I will have a really noticeable throw. Whereas sometimes with a cotton wick, it'll take up to an hour, hour and a half, and that's already like halfway into my burn if I'm burning it for 3 hours, So I think that's really nice. And it gives kind of that more instant gratification to people as well, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the crackle. Love the crackle.
Yes. Oh yeah. And this next question actually is one of my own. So this one was not submitted by a viewer, but I was personally curious, what wax and wick combination would you say specifically produces the most crackle? If
Woo,
there's any.
that is a good question. And this is kind of a multifaceted answer again, but a ballpark. So when you're looking at waxes, you are going to want a wax that either has a higher paraffin or a higher coconut content, because those waxes, they liquefy really quickly. They're not sticky. They're not oily. And so that means the wax molecules can vibrate a lot easier. So if you think of like what's happening in your little combustion reaction, right? Because each candle is a little combustion reaction. You light your flame and the flame then melts the wax, starts moving those molecules around and agitating them. And what happens is in that combustion, little crackling sounds are released. So I would recommend looking for waxes again that are higher in paraffin or higher in coconut. And just a little side note about paraffin for the paraffin haters out there. There's an isometric study done by the National Candle Association. I'll send it to Allen so he can link it below. And we have it on our website. And it talks about how in a few different testing that that paraffin burns just as clean as all other non-paraffin sources. So paraffin is non-toxic. It burns just as clean, just to get that in there. But those definitely help increase the crackle. And then in terms of pairing it with a wick specifically, all of our wooden wicks will really give a good amount of crackle. If you want to reference the crackling range, I believe on the website we have like a range typically. So when you're pairing really any crackling wooden wick with your paraffin or high coconut wax blend, it's going to crackle really nicely. Our virgin coconut soy crackles really nicely. Our cocoa apricot cream crackles really nicely. Our pure palm paraffin crackles really nicely. I mean, even our beeswax cocoa cream crackles really nicely. It's really when you run into 100% soy blends and 100% beeswax blends, those dampen the crackle significantly. So I would just avoid doing that, or cutting your beeswax like you do, Allen, cutting your beeswax with something else, or cutting your soy with something else. And then in terms of like the variety of wooden wick, really just any wooden wick that is not a, I'm totally blanking, our whisper wicks. I haven't looked at the whisper wicks in a long time. Any wick that isn't a whisper wick, really. I mean, the single ply, I would say that there's not a significant difference between the single ply and the booster wick, as long as you're using a wax blend that helps emphasize the crackle. And again, your fragrance percentage load will also influence the amount of crackle that you get to. A lot of times higher percentage fragrance load will also increase the fragrance as well, or sorry, increase the crackle as well.
Yeah. Wow, I did not actually know that. So if I'm using 10%, with that kind of being in the middle of the 8 to 12% that you mentioned earlier, is that would 12% be better in terms of further increasing it, or is 10% still pretty good in general, would you say?
I would say, again, it's more dictated by the wax. So the fragrance load really is just like that last like little extra step, if like you want to see if you can get it to crackle a little bit more. But I would just do a burn test and see if by increasing to 12%, if there's a significant amount of crackling difference. But I would say it probably evens out more so when you're using the optimized wax than increasing your fragrance load rather.
Yeah, excellent. That's really good information. And then the last question that we had is, so this is kind of a personal question, and only if you're comfortable answering it. But we had some viewers interested in what your personal favorite wax and wick combination would be, if you're open to sharing.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking, guys. I am always happy to share my favorites. I am more partial to the cocoa apricot cream. It's my favorite wax. It's just so creamy and it has an amazing crackle. I love that the apricot oil is very unique. And I love that. And it also has a high burn rate and burn point. So it doesn't really take a lot of wood material to burn. And I love that because I can use single ply wicks with it. So then answering the other part of that question, my wick favorite that goes with it is I love our colored wicks and I love our word wicks. I think they're really fun and they're really unique. And the cocoa apricot cream works wonderfully with a single ply. the single ply wick. And if you want me to even get granular in the sizing, again, I can't give you like an end all be all, but I can give you a place to start. So don't come hunt me down if your testing doesn't work. But I believe in the Aura vessel, that would be a 0.625 at a 0.02 thickness single ply would be where I would start burn testing in the Aura vessel, the 12-ounce Aura vessel. And I love it.
Excellent. Yeah, I know some people have been referencing the cocoa apricot cream as like the luxury wax or the wooden wick wax. And I think that that's probably for good reason, right? Because coconut waxes are just becoming more and more popular. And the apricot, like you said, is really unique to have in there as well. And the fact that it produces such a good crackle and fragrance throw is, you know, just icing on the cake with that one. Well, anyways, Mel, we really appreciate having you on the channel, and we thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been super fun, and I hope you guys learned a lot. And if you guys ever have any questions too, feel free to leave them on the video here or leave them on our channel, and I'll make sure that I'm checking it and we'll get your answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Any questions that you have beyond the scope of this video, as Mel said, please drop them in the comments and we will do our best to answer all those questions that you might have. And if you did enjoy this one, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And we are sending all of you peace, love, and light. And we are wishing all of you happy candle making.